Ambassador Huckabee, first of all, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Cameron. Great to be with you and looking forward to the conversation.
Us as well. Let's start out with something very important. You have been one of the most articulate voices in the pro-Israel world. I want you to explain how you see two key issues: how Israel serves America's interests and how it upholds American values.
So many Americans think that our partnership with Israel is a one-way street. I feel like that my primary goal as ambassador of the U.S. to Israel is certainly to represent the government of the United States to Israel. But it's also to help Americans understand why we have this partnership, why it is so valuable to us. Most Americans don't think about it. But there are some big issues. For example, the way that we share intelligence between our countries. It's seamless. Well, that's an incredibly important role in counterterrorism. There are Americans alive today because terror activities that were planned to kill Americans were thwarted because of intelligence that we received from the Israeli intelligence service. They in turn get intelligence for us. It is a synergy that has worked for both countries very effectively. When we look at military issues, we have hardware that we share interchangeably. It's very valuable to us. But there's also ways in which technology, medical innovations, agricultural creations and breakthroughs all have benefited Americans. I can be specific. Do you like a cherry tomato or a seedless watermelon? Thank Israel for that. What about a cell phone? What would Americans do without their cell phone? Well, they wouldn't have one if it weren't for Israel and its invention of some of the technology that helped us have the cell phone. Car navigation systems, once again, check the box. Many of the medical procedures that have saved the lives of our fellow citizens in the United States, developed here in Jerusalem at Hadassah Medical or in Tel Aviv at Sheba Medical, are one of the many medical facilities and technological really innovation hubs that exist in Israel. Part of the reason the partnership works is because Israel can create something that is earth-changing. But with a population of around 10 million, they can't make it commercially viable. They just can't scale it up. When they partner with the U.S. company, America can scale it up to commercial viability. So now the U.S. has the benefit of a product that we didn't have to innovate. Israel gets the benefit of the marketability of that product. So now you have an Israeli billionaire who created something wonderful, and you have American consumers who are getting a product at a very affordable price, and they don't even know where it came from. It's just one of many ways, but there are dozens and dozens of examples of that.
The synergy that you're talking about, there are some people who refuse to see it. There are critics in particular on the radical left and on the radical right.
Yeah.
And what I want us, though, to focus on is the challenge to Christian Zionism, which I think, as you understand it, plays a crucial role to Israel's support amongst evangelicals around the world.
Yeah.
How do you think about that challenge that you're starting to see now to Christian Zionism?
Yeah, we need to just be very honest and clear and explain what that means. You know, I hear it as if it's some pejorative term, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, Christian Zionist is not a frightening thing. For those of us who identify as Christian, first of all, that's pretty easily defined. Zionist is simply somebody who believes that the Jewish people have a right to their ancient, indigenous, and biblical homeland. Well, quite frankly, that's a view that has been shared by people who weren't Jewish through the centuries. In fact, recently we celebrated Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. He was a Christian Zionist. So if people want to say, oh, this is a dangerous thing, well, I'm in pretty good company. There are those very harsh critics who say it's a brain virus or it's something dangerous. No, it really isn't. It's a biblical worldview that understands that as Christians, people like me, that we recognize the authority and the reliability of the biblical text. And you can't escape it. When God said to Abraham, right here in the city of Jerusalem on Mount Moriah, this is your land, I'm giving it to you, and you will be a blessing to the peoples of the earth. And those who bless you will be blessed. Those who curse you will be cursed. One can read it in Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. It's there. So if I'm a person who embraces the Bible as the revelation of God, I don't know that I have a choice. I embrace this because it's the Scripture. And I wouldn't have a Christian faith if it weren't for Judaism. Judaism is the foundation of my faith. I tell my Jewish friends a lot, you can be Jewish and you don't have to have anything to do with me as a Christian. I can't be a Christian and deny that the foundation, the historical revelation of my faith comes from the Jewish faith. So there's a debt of obligation that I owe to the Jewish people. I feel that it's not inconsistent with my own personal faith and walk. In fact, not only is it consistent, it is irrefutably an intrinsic part of it. So I don't understand the anxiety that people seem to have with the term. A lot of people don't even have faith, but they believe in Zionism, which in its rawest and non-religious version simply means that Jewish people have a right to their ancient indigenous homeland. Well, that's been thought of not only in religious circles, but going back to 1917 and the Balfour Agreement, the League of Nations in 1927, the United Nations in 1948. There has been, throughout history, a clear understanding that there is a Jewish connection to the land we're sitting in right now, and that is irrefutable not only biblically, historically, but archaeologically. And one of the great things that has happened over the past century has been the archaeological discoveries that physically tie the Jewish people to this land. The city of David, one of the most remarkable archaeological discoveries in all of human history. And every day, something new is found there that just validates this view that whether you like it or not, I don't mind it at all. But some people don't seem to like it, but they need to get over it because the stones cry out. And the very archaeological discoveries day after day affirm that when the scripture says that the Jewish people have had this land for 3,800 years, it's irrefutable.
It is amazing, the irony, that just as all of that archaeology, the facts are coming out,
Yeah.
this attempt to delegitimize the indigenous nature of that connection.
I find that it's kind of stunning. It's almost a flat earth mindset. It is as irrational as saying, you know, I know that we've sort of come to a conclusion that the earth is round, but no, it's really flat. That's what this is on the level of. If you deny that there is a historical and physical connection to the land, you really do put yourself in that category that probably believes there wasn't a moon landing, it happened in Arizona, the earth is flat, and all the images on television are fake all the way through.
Exactly. I want us to move to our present day situation now in the region. We used to have a motto that the U.S. and Israel are better together. And to go back to what you started with here in terms of that synergy. Let's start with Iran. First of all, you were quite central in that moment when it came back to the June war. How was it for you to be part of an administration that not only supported the Israeli strike to push back the Iranian nuclear project, to push back their ballistic missile project, but even to have the President of the United States decide to join in that?
You know, it made me very proud to be part of the administration of President Donald J. Trump. First of all, because no president has ever, not even close, has ever been as supportive of Israel and recognized its rightful place in the world as has President Trump. One of the reasons that I was willing to come here when he appointed me as ambassador, because I felt like that I was going to be serving a president and an American public that understood the vital relationship that we have and the importance of keeping it and growing it. I remember on that Saturday night when he gave the order to send the B-2 bombers into Fordo. And when we learned of it and then realized that it was the really coup de grace of that very amazing 12-day war, Israel has already executed a flawless military operation, the likes of which will be studied in war colleges for generations to come. There's never been anything quite like that. Predictions were that there would be many, many thousands of civilian casualties. There were 29. All but 5 of those were people who were in shelters. There was an estimation that there would be several airplanes lost, 2 or 3 a day, Not one airplane. People who work in the military, who serve within the Air Force, would be the first to tell you that you put that many hours on an airframe in the midst of combat where you don't have time to take it in the shop and really get it going over, and you're flying constant sorties, refueling in the air each way. There's just a zero chance that every airplane can survive the stress on the airframe. You'll have some mechanical problems, and then you'll have some issues in combat. Israel didn't lose a single pilot or a single airplane. I mean, there's no way I can even describe it other than to say, step back and just appreciate the miracle. That's what it was.
No. Moving to today, we fast forward. In the last month, the president has, on a number of occasions, he's emphasized that he will not allow Iran to reconstitute its nuclear project, its ballistic missile project, or to continue to murder protesters in Iran, these incredibly brave protesters.
Yeah.
How do you think about where American policy is right now, the thinking about the Iranian challenge?
Cameron, in the South where I grew up, we have a phrase: there is no education in the second kick of a mule. And it simply means that if the mule kicks you the first time and you didn't figure out not to stand behind the mule, the second kick won't be much of an education either. And I would say to the Iranians, you had a kick of a mule last summer. President Trump told you, you're not going to enrich uranium, you're not going to have a nuclear weapon. And they shrugged their shoulders and thought, this president's like all the others. He won't do anything. Until Saturday night when B-2 bombers showed up and said, yes, he will. If he makes a promise, he will keep it. It seems that they're really on a short memory stick here. And when the president says, quit killing the protesters, quit murdering them in your streets, and you're still not going to get a nuclear weapon, it would do well for them to learn from the first kick of the mule and not require a second.
Moving to Lebanon, we saw that the Lebanese government recognized that the Lebanese army has, they called it operational control over the south, but they did not say that Hezbollah is fully disarmed. And I think that that's probably because of the way the United States has been saying things as well. Are Israel and the United States viewing the situation in Lebanon, the need to disarm Hezbollah fully? Are they on the same page with that? Are we seeing things differently? And the path forward to get there?
I think it's a great question, and I feel very comfortable in telling you that there is a seamless view between the Americans and the Israelis that Hezbollah is a significant danger, not just in this hemisphere. Hezbollah is a danger to the Western Hemisphere. Again, Americans don't understand. Hezbollah is active in 12 South and Central American countries. I would venture to say that there are Hezbollah cells in the United States right now. They're not holding meetings and renting venues to have rallies and protest, because I think they know that probably wouldn't end well for them. But we've seen several years of unhindered immigration where we had no idea who was coming in. We knew that people were coming in from Iran. We knew people were coming in from Middle Eastern countries that didn't like us. I think it stands to reason if there are 10 to 20 million that came in, there are some that came in who are Hezbollah affiliated. They're not there because they're looking for a really, really good job in the service industry and want to work construction. They want to work in deconstruction. They want to hurt people, kill people, and break things. That's why they're there. That's why they're in South and Central America. They're being financed by Tehran, but all plates that end up serving terrorism around the world through the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, comes out of one kitchen, and that's Tehran. So I think it's important that Americans understand that there is a reason why the U.S. and Israel are in sync when it comes to Hezbollah and their role in Lebanon. Hezbollah is the terror organization, one of the proxies of Iran, who has killed more Americans than any other. They were the ones behind the Marine barracks bombing in 1982. Over 200 Marines killed in that alone. Hezbollah has either succeeded or attempted to kill Americans in many parts of the world. We're not naive to their presence there being a threat not just to Israel on its northern border, but as they exist and as they grow, they're a threat to every freedom-loving person on the planet.
Regarding Syria, if you think about the jihadi background of the regime, it is, if we're speaking of miracles, it's probably nothing short of another miracle that there are in fact talks between the state of Israel and the new Syrian regime. The fact that that's happened, I think, is a big credit to the Trump administration. But do you think that there's a chance that we actually get to some sort of a diplomatic agreement?
I think there's a chance. I'll be the first to tell you it's very fragile. And we've seen some activities in the recent weeks that make it even more so. Some attacks against the Kurds that are really allies of the U.S. and some activities that just don't make sense in the context of moving toward a security agreement with Israel and a peace settlement. I still hope for it, and I still think it's possible. But it is going to require a very determined view of the new Syrian government that they cannot be a part of any terrorist activity. They cannot be heavy-handed when it comes to minority populations within Syria, whether it's the Kurds, the Alawites, the Druze, or the Christians. There has to be protection for all of those minorities. There can't be a slaughter of them, and there have been instances in which that's happened. So this new government needs to decide how it's going to function, how it's going to operate, and under what standard of behavior that it will move forward with, because it could be that it could bring a peace, stability, and a realignment of the Middle East, or it could all go collapsing within itself and become a complete disaster. I'm praying for something significant. I'm praying for the peace initiative to happen and that there will be a real realignment. And I still think that it is possible.
Another very clear achievement, I think, of the administration here has been the Gaza ceasefire. But now we're getting to a tougher moment. We are transitioning now to phase 2. And I think while there are many balls in the air, many what they call over there the lines of effort to rebuild Gaza, the key question is, what if Hamas decides to renege and not disarm? What's going to come next?
The president has said to them, as he has said to Iran, we can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way. People ask me, what do you mean by the hard way? Ask Iran how that turned out for them. I would say to Hamas, the president has been crystal clear and incredibly consistent. He's never wavered from this. Even when other American voices may have acted like there could have been some nuances, President Trump has said, no future in Gaza, no role in the future of Gaza, and you must disarm. So that's as clear as it can get, as consistently as it could possibly be since the day he took office in January of 2025. Now we have to just believe that Hamas, who signed the agreement, who said they would disarm, who said they would let all of the hostages go, they violated the agreement in these two fundamental but very critical areas. They haven't disarmed. They haven't allowed the last deceased hostage to go. It's put up or shut up time for them. And they're going to have to realize that everyone's ready to move on to accomplishing phase 2. That is not fully possible until Hamas is out of the picture and until the last hostage comes home. So the sooner this happens, the better. Hamas would do well to do it voluntarily. It's always better if you make a good choice rather than have a good choice imposed upon you. But sooner or later, it has to happen because the president and all of these nations, historic, epic moment when they all came together and signed a peace agreement, for Hamas to think that they can singularly hold that back, I think would be a very foolish miscalculation on their part.
So Israel's qualitative military edge, what we call QME for short, as you know, this has been a central pillar of Israeli security and national foreign policy. And a major component has been this memorandum of understanding. This is actually, I think, the third memorandum of understanding that we're closing out now. And there's discussions about a new Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, that we understand that the details are very sensitive and we're at a very early stage. But if I can just ask you to sort of zoom out and at a broad brush strokes sort of way, do you see the U.S. continuing to be committed in these coming decades to keeping Israel, its security assured in the coming decades, given the threats that, again, they aren't going anywhere?
I absolutely do. There are some things I'm not so sure about. I'm pretty sure about this, and let me give you some specific reasons. Secretary Rubio believes very strongly in the QME. We have bipartisan support for that in Congress. We here at Embassy Jerusalem obviously believe very strongly that Israel needs that QME in order to protect the people of Israel, which, by the way, a lot of Americans don't know this. The population here includes 700,000 Americans. Anything that happens to Israel is going to happen to some Americans over here. So we have a vested interest in making sure that there is security, that there is a world of safety. I'm very optimistic, I would say confident maybe, not just optimistic, that sounds aspirational. I'm confident that we're not going to engage in a new MOU, which we're working on now, that will have anything less than the previous ones, that recognize the value of the relationship we have with Israel, why it is in our best interest as America to protect it. And I want to emphasize that, Cameron, because there are still people who think, oh, you're doing it for Israel. No. We're doing this for America. America benefits because every enemy Israel has is our enemy. Every attack on them is the prerequisite for an attack on us. For 47 years, Iran's been saying death to Israel, and then in the same sentence, death to America. Israel has always been the appetizer. We've always been the entree. So we are taking better care of ourselves as Americans when we also partner with Israel to make sure that nothing happens to them.
Finally, you have been ambassador through, and I know this feels like in dog years, right? You have not actually served for 1 year yet, and yet you have been through a number of epic, historic moments. If you take a moment and think back about the less than 1 year that you've served, is there anything in particular that sort of stands out to you as, let's call these pinch me moments, things that you say to yourself, I can't believe I've been able to be a part of that?
You know, Cameron, I have been here less than a year. I've been through 4 wars, all of which will forever stay with me. But the moment that is going to be the most memorable is that day in October. The president was on his way to Israel, about to land on Air Force One, to make a historic speech at the Knesset to announce the ceasefire. But I'm sitting at Ben Gurion Airport waiting on Air Force One to land, and I'm watching the living hostages released and get into the arms of their families. And having met with virtually every hostage family and many of the previously released hostages, there was a wave of emotion that came over me from watching them come. In many cases, I knew their mothers, their fathers, their sons, their daughters, their brothers, their sisters, and to see them, all I've seen is their pictures on posters, but now I'm seeing them and they're coming out. And it was a moment that will live with me forever. Not unlike the day that the American hostages came out of Iran on the day of Ronald Reagan's swearing in 1981 of January. It was another moment like that. And the only other thing that I really can even compare it to is something of such historic significance. When the moon landing happened, July of 1969, and Neil Armstrong stepped on the surface of the moon and told the world that it's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. I'll always remember that. I was a teenager, but I'll never forget it. I'll never forget the hostages coming out of Iran, and I'll never forget the hostages coming out of Gaza, and realizing that that may have been one small step for those hostages, but it was a giant leap for mankind. And later that day, President Trump gathered every single Arab leader in Sharm el-Sheikh, and they signed a peace agreement, which was historic in itself. And it's just a day that will forever be with me as a great moment to have been the U.S. ambassador to Israel.